Welcome to the 33rd episode of the Tertius Times podcast. Today is Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. I'm your host, Brian Wright, and today we will look at a new USCIRF report on the status of religious liberty and human rights issues in Saudi Arabia. For the interview segment, I interview Pastor Wally, who has suffered persecution himself and continues to do enormous work on behalf of the persecuted church. If you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. As the website states, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations. The first line of this new report, Religious Freedom Conditions in Saudi Arabia, September 21, from USCIRF, somberly states, quote, 2021 religious freedom conditions in Saudi Arabia remained poor, unquote, adding, quote, COVID-19's global pandemic tempered somewhat the volume of egregious actions, unquote, mostly centered on freedom of religion issues. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud has been attempting to integrate laws which adhere, quote, to Sharia principles, unquote, which would, quote, if enacted, improve religious freedom, unquote. An indication of, quote unquote, incremental reforms, the report points out that, quote, throughout 2021, the Saudi government has continued to issue decrees and amend laws to shift power away from the kingdom's religious authorities and, in some cases, limit the role of religiously grounded legal systems like male guardianship, unquote, which it adds, quote, treats women as legal minors for life, unquote. Other positive reforms have been noted, such as changes in textbooks illustrating greater tolerance of religious minorities and non-Muslims, as well as the deletion of a unit on, quote, violent jihad, unquote. Although the report enumerates a number of changes, it insists that, quote, their cumulative effects remain difficult to determine, unquote. It further indicates that the few freedoms of conscience protections that do exist are not widely disseminated to local authorities, nor to the public, in that, quote, the Saudi government treats religious freedom as a privilege granted by the state rather than a universal right guaranteed to every individual under international law, unquote. Unfortunately, there continue to be restrictions placed upon Shia Muslims, who make up 10 to 15% of the population, and other religious minorities. An entire section of the report lists a number of limitations imposed on Shia Muslims, such as worship prohibitions, mosque building and upkeep, continued persecution, including execution, of Shias who participated in 2011 protests, and a variety of other ways the government attempts to control that minority. Other religious dissidents are also mistreated, including fellow Sunnis who disagree with official governmental interpretation of Islam. Quote, the prosecution of those who peacefully express dissenting religious beliefs, the report continues, undercuts the government's narrative that it is pursuing genuine reforms towards greater freedom of religion or belief, unquote. The kingdom also detains and mistreats, quote, religious prisoners of conscience, unquote, preventing them, even after release, from contacting the media. The detention, imprisonment, and human rights abuses of Sheikh Mohammed al-Habib, a Shia cleric, Sheikh Salman al-Oda, a prominent Sawa movement member, a dissident organization, and Islamic scholar Hassan Farhan al-Maliki, in addition to a blogger and a poet, are provided as examples. All reportedly protested peacefully against the government. The report indicates that, quote, those who advocate for change in Saudi Arabia, including changes the government has later implemented, face egregious mistreatment and lengthy prison sentences for exercising their freedom of religion or belief, unquote. While women in Saudi Arabia may now, quote, change their personal data on file, unquote, they have, quote, the right to live where they like, unquote, and new laws, quote, no longer require women to have a religiously approved male escort, a mahram, accompany them on the pilgrimage to Mecca, unquote. The quote, male guardianship still imposes a singular government interpretation of Islam on women and girls in Saudi Arabia, unquote. For example, if there is quote unquote evidence, which is not legally defined, a woman committed a crime, guardians are allowed, quote, to forcibly return a woman home, unquote. One woman, Lojane Al-Hathlal, released from prison in February 2021, was, quote, likely tortured, unquote, while held for peacefully protesting for those rights women now have. In May, her conviction on terrorism charges was upheld and, quote, she remains under a 5-year travel ban and 3 years probation, unquote. Other women have reported being stalked or arrested, one for, quote, teaching Quran classes at her house. The report concludes that, quote, every year since 2004, the State Department has concurred with USCIRF's recommendation that Saudi Arabia be designated a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, most recently in December of 2020. Each time, however, the State Department has issued a national security waiver that shields the Saudi government from accountability based on this designation. USCIRF pleads that the current administration, including the Secretary of State, should review this national security waiver, which would also afford the United States a greater ability to impose targeted sanctions on high-level officials complicit in severe abuses of religious freedom, unquote, and that Congress put pressure upon the administration. And for clarification, the basis of current Saudi law are the Quran, the traditions of the Prophet, or Sunnah, and interpretation of that Islamic law, or Sharia. For example, capital punishment is imposed for apostasy, LGBTI identity, and evil, quote, peaceful dissent, unquote. Pray for Saudi Arabia that the leaders, particularly Crown Prince Mohammed bin Al-Salman Al Saud, continue to reform the legal and religious system of the country, making it more tolerant to religious minorities, the rights of women, and even of dissidents. Pray for those in opposition to reform that they may be guided in the right path of true justice, true peace, and true acceptance of others. Pray for the people of Saudi Arabia, that they welcome the reforms and encourage the government to make progress. Pray for those non-citizens who live and work in the kingdom, that they would also be beneficiaries of the ongoing reforms. Pray that the guardian of the two most sacred Islamic sites recognizes the sacredness of all those who live within its borders and honor them as images of the divine. Pray also that the U.S. effectively treads the tightrope between moral imperative and political necessity and conveys encouragement to the Saudi crown, while also rightfully pointing out the kingdom's consistent violations of religious freedom, women's rights, and other sanctioned inhumane activities. Thanks for joining me. I have with me today for our interview segment, Pastor Wally. He was a missionary in the Middle East, and he's going to share some of his story with us today, and then we'll talk about other issues for the rest of the week. So, Pastor Wally, give us a sense of who you are.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's really, I look forward to being with you on your show, and I really appreciate, the kind of work you're doing, making known to people out there things that they need to know, especially during this time. So yeah, my name is Wally. I'm always known as Pastor Wally. Not long after I got saved, the Lord opened doors for me, and I ended up in the nation of Saudi Arabia, the very birthplace and the center of the Islamic religion.
And where were you born?
Oh, I was born in the Philippines.
Okay.
I was born and raised in the Philippines. I had a background from the Catholic Church, raised in the Catholic Church. But as a young adult, I got saved. And I've always wanted to serve the Lord, even when I was a younger boy in the Catholic Church.
Right.
So when I got saved, things began to unravel, and the reality of the kingdom of God really hit me hard. And I started to, just share the gospel to people, one-on-one or in public. I would stand in a street corner, or I'll go to an office building and captivate the employees, about the gospel. But the Lord knew my heart. I prayed that God would send me anywhere and use me, according to Matthew 28, the
Right.
Great Mission. So that's what he did. He opened doors, and I ended up in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Back in the day when I was there, he was a very strict implementer of the Islamic religion. A lot of no-nos, like
Right.
no Bibles are allowed, no Christian church are allowed. You can be thrown to prison if you witness to a Muslim and they report you or they catch you. So there was a lot of many restrictions. There was, and like in the free world, we are so used to like having entertainment, like we go to movies, we go to an
Right.
amusement park, things like that. They were not around back in the day in Arabia. They were very strict that men and women were not allowed to be caught together in public. And
Right.
even in private, if they catch you and you are not related by blood, you can be jailed. So many restrictions. But in that atmosphere, the Lord prevailed upon me and several of the brethren to continue to advance the gospel, and which we did. I was a part of a group of men that started secret house churches.
Right. Right.
Eventually, we, because of the demand for more, people were coming from all directions, totally complete strangers to us. But we realized that when the good news begins to touch people's lives, it's very contagious. The one that gets saved cannot help but talk about their salvation to others, which brought
Right.
about really to the increase of the number of people that we're able to reach. And we could not stop the increase. People kept coming almost on a daily basis. So
Wow.
we were forced, which is a good word, to really meet in secret. Initially, we met in secret as few as only 3 to like 10 people, but the numbers kept coming and kept growing. We were packing, apartments. At
Wow.
the same time, we were really going out to the deserts and to the villages sharing the gospel. And then we had to, find bigger facilities.
We will leave the interview there and pick it up tomorrow, where Pastor Wally will continue to share his experiences as a servant of God. By way of reminder, the previous event, USCIRF hearing Strategies for Religious Freedom in Fragile States, has been posted on YouTube. The link is in the description. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. Again, as the website states, quote, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations, unquote. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you found the information and interview presented here useful, and that it encouraged you to pray for these people and areas of concern, and perhaps even inspires you to take positive steps of involvement to alleviate the suffering of so many around the globe. Continue to pray for those mentioned today as you are led. Finally, pray with me that God's peace, eternally beyond our comprehension, guard the lives of all those who follow Christ and flow outward to bring that peace to all the world.